What do you think when Russell Wilson was saying to Mike Tomlin after the tough start, like, I'm going to get hot, do you reckon Mike Tomlin's like, all right, well, you haven't been good in 3 years, Russ, can you show me it now?
Yeah, obviously he believed in him. That's what I say to Matt Casey, producer of Football Night in America. Like, I'm going to get hot. Yeah, whatever. I know I took the Jets last night on national television. I know they completely embarrassed me, but I'm going to get hot, Matt Casey. I promise. Just stick with me here.
Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, served by Applebee's.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Happy Hour. Welcome to Waiver Wire Day. You're probably here because everybody's hurt. Connor Rogers, Matthew Berry, Jay Croucher, after Matthew's full-blown fantasy meltdown last night.
I was tilting so hard.
I had to turn my phone off.
You're smart too.
Do Not Disturb had to come on at some moment.
Backup producer Pete gaslighting in the League of Assholes group chat. I was up significantly on producer Steven. And just one of those weeks, you know what I mean, where my guys went off, his guys didn't. I was up, I think I was up almost 40 points going in Monday Night Football. And I have both Big Dog, Derrick Henry, and Mike Evans. I'm feeling pretty good. I'm up 40 with those two guys. All he's got.
You're going to run up the score.
Of course, because he's got guys that have never produced anything. Mark Andrews has been crappy all year. Rashod Bateman, who's done nothing. James Conner might be okay, but James Conner isn't going to make up 40 points on Derrick Henry. And then you see what happens there after the Rashod Bateman touchdown, which is ridiculous because he'd already caught a 40-yarder, and Mark Andrews comes up from the grave. And look at this. All of a sudden now, producer Steven, he's winning by over a point, 0.94, and I full on tilt.
You imploded in the chat.
Because, can I tell you, 5 minutes prior to this, backup producer Pete's in the group chat saying, don't worry, Matthew.
You can't lose.
You can't lose.
Yeah.
You've got this one. Why are you worried? And I'm like, you never know. It's football. Anything can happen. Bateman had already caught that 45-yarder or whatever, 49-yarder, and I'm like, Bateman's already gotten more points than he should have. And then the touchdown happens. And it's just absolutely outrageous. But luckily, Derrick Henry gets a long run, gets me back in it. But then Mark Andrews gets a touchdown, his second of the night.
This is a thriller.
What the hell?
Yeah.
Mark Andrews has been dead all year long. He's sitting there crushing on waiver wires across America, except in our stupid league where it's a bunch of assholes, so you have to start a guy like Mark Andrews. Producer Steven, oh my God. And Pete is sitting there just laughing his ass off.
He's loving it.
He's just gaslighting me left and right. Everyone in the group chat is just piling on as well. Lawrence is loving it. Danny is bringing analytics. It's so annoying, but ultimately, justice prevailed.
Go easy on justice prevailing. You prevailed. I don't know about justice very much.
Prevailed. The right side of karma prevailed as well. Because James Conner gets tackled at the 11-yard line. It was close, down the stretch. I thought, oh my goodness. Because I desperately needed. Here's the other thing that was happening last night for me, for your boy Matty, is I'm dead last. It's between me and backup producer Pete in our Show Guillotine League, and so I had Kyler, and so I needed Kyler to get a few more points to defeat Pete, who had taken the lead on the last Chris Godwin catch, which we'll get to in a second. And here you go. This is my team. Fins up forever. Kyler Murray comes through with 20 points, and as you see it there, I narrowly won. Yeah, exactly. Deontay Johnson killed me. Malik didn't have a great game. It's a good team, but as you see, we're down to the nitty-gritty here in Guillotine League as well. But backup producers Pete, one night in Buffalo falls just short. It's Fantasy Karma's way of saying, Pete, you should have been gaslighting Barry in the group chat. It's your fault that Rashod Bateman had such the game that he did. And so anyway, at the end of it all, backup producer Pete has been cut from the Guillotine League. Producer Steven has lost. All is right in the world.
Justice prevailed.
Yes, justice prevailed.
Justice
what a win for justice.
Prevailed.
The good guy wins.
Has prevailed. The good guy finally.
The Cinderella story.
Right.
The underdog hero.
No one believed in us.
Yeah.
No one believed in us.
No.
Finally, something good happens to me in the world of fantasy football. Finally, I've had some success. It's very exciting.
It's unbelievable. You're like the WNBA finals. Every game comes down to the wire for you every week. Me. Fortunately, justice actually did prevail when I beat you with the Tyler Lockett gate.
So
Tyler
awful.
Lockett, American hero.
Yeah, Tyler Lockett getting that BS holding call to pull back a reception for JSN made you win by 0.14 points. So Yeah, it is. It's been a nail biter. I have the third highest score in the league. I feel bad for producer Steven, actually, who has the fourth highest score in the league of our 12-team, our deep 12-team league,
and
gets the L. We don't do the double wins or losses, which we should do for next year as well. And then, meanwhile, Yahoo has the audacity to send me and Steven grades. Again, I had the third highest score in a week where everyone gets decimated.
What did they give you?
I got a B-.
Yeah.
I got a B-. Producer Steven got like a C-. The Yahoo grades are out of control.
Squeaked by for a win. It's a B-. You field goaled your way to a win.
I had the third highest score, despite Juju Smith-Schuster, Jaden Daniels, and Mike Evans all leaving the game early due to injuries. I guess Yahoo thought I should have started Mason Rudolph, who finished with over 10 points, then Jaden Daniels, who finished with just 5 because he left after the first drive.
Do you know who's leading the league of ourselves in terms of points scored for the season?
Is it you or is it Pete?
Oh, no, it would be me. It would be the Grape
you?
Slappers. Though I am
Slappers?
4-3. And have lost a couple of games and lost Brandon Ayuk. So the Grape Slappers started to
Cooper
teeter.
Cup.
Cooper Cup coming back.
Maybe
Yeah.
at some
I can't
point.
get my Yahoo settings out of Australian Eastern Standard Time. So it's like, why is Joe Mixon playing at 4 a.m. on Monday morning? But that's okay. We'll
You've
overcome.
lived here for how long?
We'll overcome the time zone and we'll overcome our opponents to triumph in this league.
Look,
5 years. Connor.
yeah.
5 years in the United States.
4-3. I too am 4-3. Here you go. Here's our grades. It's outrageous. Yeah, I got a B-. C for Penn State Blake Memorial Team. That's producer Steven.
It's a great name.
It's a great name as well. But he deserves better than a C.
was a great effort.
He started Rashod Bateman and got
Genius move.
Genius move.
It's tough when you get defeated by justice.
Yeah,
it all goes out the window.
And by the way, shout out to our buddy Lawrence Jackson, who in his Flex Plays article this week on RotoWorld recommended Rashod Bateman as a strong play. So shout out to LJ. Great job by Lawrence. Great job by producer Steven for reading him. I just kind of skim it quickly. And throwing Bateman into his lineup and almost pulled off the W. I don't know why he got a C. The Yahoo grades are out of control.
Rashod Bateman might come up later in the show.
He might. Should we get started? We'll get started on Waiver Wire.
Yeah, let's jump into.
Back up, producer Pete, once again, of gaslighting me into starting the show this way.
I'll take some blame for that.
Yeah.
All right, Waiver Wired. We start with the wide receivers. There are no buys
Overcoming
this week.
adversity. No one believed in me.
You are a true underdog.
Thank
on this
you.
show.
It's a true underdog story.
Yeah, you represent the little people.
I do. I really do.
Let Leicester City bury over here. Unbelievable.
That's right. What a story. All right, Waiver Wired wide receivers. Once again, no buys this week. Jauan Jennings.
Is there anything in our league more annoying than losing to me? And losing to me like on a
I
last
play
play?
you this week, and I think I'm just gonna opt out of communications for a couple days.
I wouldn't know because I beat you.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I would imagine it's fair.
It's a good call. That's well done. That's well played. Fair enough. Fair enough. Anyway,
wide receivers.
Here we go.
Jauan Jennings against the Cowboys. He's 70% available. Obviously, Jauan Jennings has been banged up, but the real story here is the injury situation in San Francisco. Brandon Ayuk is out for the season. That is a torn ACL and MCL, a long road ahead for Brandon Ayuk. Deebo Samuel hospitalized with pneumonia. We saw him with the oxygen mask on the sideline in this game. So Deebo, obviously, a little bit of a scary situation there as he is sick. George Kittle day-to-day with a sprained foot, Matthew. So Jennings, who's had his moments, now is the guy amongst the San Francisco pass catchers?
It would appear that way. Now, he didn't play last week, but the expectation is that he'll be ready to go on Sunday night. That's something else to note, just as we talk about the Niners. It is the Sunday night game against Dallas. Should be a great game right here on NBC and Peacock. I'm a company man. But we may not know up until game time. You may have to make decisions Sunday morning without knowing the status of Deebo and Kittle. Hopefully we'll get more clarity going into the week as the week progresses. And, of course, all the latest on fantasy football pregame Sunday morning on Peacock and the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. Once again, I'm a company man. To your question about Jauan Jennings, though, Connor, you're absolutely right. He's played over his last 5 games. He's gotten at least one end zone target in 4 of them. He's 4th among qualified wide receivers in yards per target this season. Like, when he's gotten out there, he's gotten an opportunity. Right? The one game where he played over 60% of the snaps, he had 46.5 fantasy points. Like, he had that monster game. I'm not predicting that every week. But the fact of the matter is that we've talked about this quite a bit. We talked about this before his big blow-up game. He should have been if the Niners win the Super Bowl, he'd have had a very good case to be the MVP in the Super Bowl. When Jauan Jennings has gotten an opportunity in his career, he has produced, and clearly with the season-ending injury to Brandon Ayuk, Jauan Jennings is going to get a big opportunity here in this 49ers offense that needs to get going. And it does feel like Brock Purdy is playing very well. It's sort of been overshadowed by, some of the bad losses of the 49ers, all the injuries, but Purdy's playing at a really high level so far, and Jauan Jennings stands to benefit here with the unfortunate injury to Ayuk.
They need more from Purdy right now, too, going forward.
Well, he was playing very well up until last week.
That last week was kind of the reckoning.
Right. But yes.
Spags' defense seems to always give Shanahan and Purdy problems, but
it gives everyone problems.
Right.
I mean, they've been giving up more than 2 touchdown passes all year.
And they ran out of players in that game.
Yeah.
So, but you're right. It was a really tough game for him.
Tough situation. He was
Lamar Jackson's going to win the MVP, and he didn't do much against Spags' defense in the opening game.
It's true.
I'm just
So and we'll talk about that. But with Jauan Jennings, there was one game where he got to be the guy, and he went 11 for 175 with 3 touchdowns. Now, you're not going to get the Rams secondary every week, but still, Jauan Jennings, every week he's a locked and loaded wide receiver 2.
Here's their upcoming schedule. The Cowboys, which I don't think that defense scares you anymore. Then they have a bye, try to get set, try to figure everything out. At Tampa Bay, we know that secondary is a mess. And then home to Seattle. And you can throw on Seattle, which they already previously have. So I think, to me, he's if people dropped Jauan Jennings last week because Ayuk was back and Jennings was out, which I could see with bye weeks and all the other injuries that happened. Jennings out there in over 70% of Yahoo leagues. To me, I think he's the number 1 wide receiver pickup if you're using anything. I also want to talk about real quickly. So we saw Ricky Pearsall come back. Obviously, horrific situation in the offseason with the shooting incident. I don't even know if incident's the right word, but robbery. Yeah, robbery. It was awful. But Ricky Pearsall, awesome to see him back out there. 86% route participation in his first game back, and Jacob Cowing had 2 red zone targets last week. He only ran 8 routes,
but he
earned a target on 3 of them. For people that aren't familiar with Ricky Pearsall and Jacob Cowing, I know Cowing was a star at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, they both were, ironically.
But Ricky Pearsall was somebody that was a much higher regarded prospect.
Yeah, he worked his way up to the first round, while Cowing was always going to be this day 3 kind of guy. And, listen, really small, shifty slot receiver that was highly productive for Arizona. He was their offense.
Cowing.
Cowing got 1 million targets in college. He's somebody that understands how to get open in the short area. I don't think he'll be a deep threat in this offense, although it feels like they're looking for one right now. But he's somebody that, is there a world where he can have that almost Ray McLeod kind of role in this offense where he can get you 4 catches for 45 yards? Cowing can do that. So I'm curious how they kind of manage the reps. I would want whoever they're going to actually use in the slot in this offense when everybody's back. Now, that to me is the only way Cowing gets on the field, but Jennings and Pearsall can also handle that role. So Cowing just might be true reserve depth right now.
The other thing, too, is that after this Cowboys game, they have their bye. And so presumably, you would hope that after that, you're going to have Debo back and you're going to have Kittle back if he's not back for this week already. And at that point, you would think that certainly the top 3 guys are Debo, Kittle, and Jennings. But there is still opportunity for other guys to break in, such as Cowling and Pearsall.
Another important note from San Francisco right now, Kyle Shanahan was asked about Christian McCaffrey, and he said, I'd be surprised to get him back this week. He'll have a much better chance there right after the bye week. They're not going to push McCaffrey before the bye, I don't think. It didn't sound like it with Shanahan.
I'll just say this.
Although he also didn't tell anyone that McCaffrey was going to be out the first 2 months of the season, so who the hell knows?
Thank you. Exactly. And also didn't say anything about Debo, who, played 3 snaps, oh, no, Debo's going to be fine. The Niners are what, 3-4?
Yes.
Yeah.
The Niners are 3-4.
Hard to believe.
They don't want to go to 3-5, especially after the Seahawks won last week. The Niners don't want to go to 3-5. And it's a home game against Dallas, which is an important game, very important game for a couple reasons. Obviously, it's a big national game, NBC, blah, blah, blah. And you don't want to go to 3-5. But it's also, if you look at sort of the way the season's playing out, right now, if the playoffs started today, San Francisco and Dallas are both out of the playoffs. 2 teams that obviously expected to be in there at the beginning of the season. There's a very good chance this game, this Niners-Cowboys game, comes down to, at the end of the year, one of those teams makes the playoffs and one of them doesn't, especially if the Seahawks end up, continuing to get hot here. And now the Niners are in the wild card position because I don't think the Cowboys are in the division between the way the Eagles and the Commanders are playing. So all I'm saying here is that if Christian McCaffrey were coming back Sunday night, do you really think Kyle Shanahan would tell you on a Tuesday or on a Monday, based on everything we've learned about Kyle Shanahan so far this year? Exactly. I don't know that he's coming back or not, but if ever there was a week that, hey, you kind of need him out there and you don't want Dallas to be aware that he's going to be out there, this might be the week.
All right, moving on.
I'm just saying.
Fired up.
Yeah.
Honestly, it drives me crazy because there is actual real gambling is legal in America, and there are rules in place for reporting injuries in the NFL. And I don't mean to go all pro football talk. This is much more of a Florio, Chris Sims conversation. But it seems outrageous to me. It affects us. It affects the sports betting world. It affects the integrity of the NFL. And the fact that they're like, oh yeah, he had an Achilles tear, but we forgot to mention it. No biggie, right? We're good, right? He's out for the first 7, maybe 8 weeks of the season. The fact that they're like, oh yeah, we looked into it, no big deal. I'm like, anyway, let's move on. I'm fired up. I'm fired up because the preseason reporting on that, and there were definitely some people that carried the water for the Niners there that was questionable, shaky. Okay. I'll leave it at that. Trying not to get back up.
Our hero fights for vengeance and justice once again.
Yes.
One more note on Sunday Night Football to keep an eye on for this matchup.
We already prevailed in fantasy. Come on now.
Micah Parsons and Deron Bland will be game time decisions. Obviously, both those players have a huge role for the Dallas defense against San Francisco if they suit up. Moving on to the Packers wide receivers. Yes, 2 of them meet our threshold. Romeo Doubs, 56% available. Check your league on that one. Dontayvion Wicks, 73% available against Jacksonville, Jay, Jacksonville is a fantasy buffet for whoever is playing against them.
They are. Now, the Packers wide receiver Rubik's Cube is this weekly problem that needs to be solved. I think the best way to look at it is just who is out there and who is playing the most, because we can't predict who is going to get thrown the ball. We can make predictions off of just who is going to be out there for the most snaps. And last week, the guys who are playing the most are Romeo Doubs and Jaden Reed.
Right.
Jaden Reed is clearly the number 1 guy that you want. But outside of that, Dobbs, now Christian Watson and Dontayvion Wicks, they've both been dealing with injuries, so you don't know how much of that is management. But Romeo Doubs, who again, he just goes under the radar constantly. His target count was in the 90s last season. And again, I would say that he is probably the best bet to be the number 2 wide receiver on the team.
It's a great matchup with Jacksonville this week, right? Especially with the Jags allowing the 3rd most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. But yeah, Dobbs seems to get a lot of looks when they get in close as well. He's now had back-to-back games since he had to sit out a game because he was bitching about his role on the team. He's now had squeaky wheel gets the grease though, right?
Maybe he was right.
Honestly, he's had back-to-back games with over 17 fantasy points now with Jordan Love since that week when he sat out and pouted. He's averaging almost 14 points per game in games with Jordan Love this season. I prefer Dobbs to Wicks, who in every game that Christian Watson has been healthy this year, Wicks has had a below 56% route participation. I love the player. I love the talent of Dontayvion Wicks. It just feels like he can't get on the field in a full-time role. I know he had the big game. He actually leads the team in red zone and end zone targets, but that's the thing with Wicks because he's only playing about half the snaps, assuming all 4 guys are healthy. So that's what you're hoping for when you start Wicks is that he's going to get into the end zone. Worth noting, however, the Jags have allowed 5 touchdowns to wide receivers in just their past 3 games. So he does have a pretty decent shot at getting into pay dirt on Sunday against Jacksonville.
Ravens wide receiver Rashod Bateman, who we discussed at large at the top of the show, he's 83% available against the Browns. And Matthew, as you know,
don't make me talk about Rashod Bateman.
As you know very well,
go ahead.
Targeted 4 times. Caught all 4 of them, 121 yards,
and
a touchdown. What a performance for Rashod Bateman.
Magnificent
Almost
performance
heroic.
from Rashod Bateman. Justice was very nearly served, and it would have been a dish very, very cold and delicious, but unfortunately Matthew won. But with Rashod Bateman, Connor, do you think that there is a chance, I think we think of Rashod Bateman, he's a very known commodity. He's been on the Ravens for 4 years. This is what he is. He caught a couple of deep balls last night, doesn't change anything. But he's still a first-round pick. He's dealt with a lot of injuries, and it seems like he's healthy. His PFF grading has always been atrocious. Now this year it's really good. Is there a chance that Rashod Bateman is an actual much better player this season?
And when PFF grading with wide receivers, and this matters, so it's fair, but they kill you for drops. They sink you for drops. And he's had some big drops in between injuries throughout the first couple years of his career. He feels boom or bust, and that's because he's getting targeted down the field. It's now 3 straight games with multiple deep targets. So during the bye weeks, and there's none this week, but there will be a lying ahead, if you have a desperation flex in a deep league like the League of Assholes, like Steven did last night, you could start Rashod Bateman and hope it's a boom because somebody has to catch the ball down the field, and nobody else in this offense does.
Very Gabe Davis-y from
Very
last year.
Gabe Davis. That's exactly what it feels like.
Although there's more of a floor here for he who will not be named. At least 11 fantasy points in 4 of his last 5 games. What drives me crazy about Rashod Bateman, and it's just so much, but I have him in a dynasty league. Everyone out there that's in a dynasty league knows what I'm talking about here, because Rashod Bateman, to your point, came into the NFL with a first round degree pedigree, somebody that crushed Purdue, right? He was Minnesota, sorry, and it was
same conference.
Yeah, it is. I knew it was a Big
That's
Ten.
pretty good for you for college.
Very close.
Thank you. I was just saying.
Geographically, not that far apart.
Minnesota. And they've. The helmets are sort of the same, kind of the gold, everything like that. Anyway, the fact of the matter is...
You lost it there. You let go of the thread.
You had us in the first half.
Yeah, right, what are you going to do? No, Minnesota has the M in the, right?
I'd drop it.
It's not gold. Purdue's gold.
Purdue is gold with a P, but
Minnesota
maroon?
Maroon and like more of a mustardy.
I'm thinking about the mustardy, with the mustardy with the blue.
Yeah, mustard and gold, I'll pay it.
Thank you. I'm colorblind.
It's not the worst. It's not like you said it was Michigan State. Similarity.
Yeah. You know how I feel about Michigan State.
Yeah, we'll never go back.
Never go back. Never go back.
We actually don't know what happened, but we know we're not going. Sorry, Applebee's. Michigan State. East Lansing.
Well, then they showed Hitler on the scoreboard, and so I'm definitely going. Never going there.
That's fair.
All right, Rashod Bateman. We've been waiting for him forever in Dynasty. He came into the league with a day one pedigree and just has never produced. Injuries have derailed his career. It's been in and out of the lineup. But to your point about this Ravens offense, Nelson Aguilar hasn't really stepped up. Despite last night, Mark Andrews has sort of been absent. Lamar is playing at an MVP level, truly. So Bateman drove me crazy last night, completely gaslighted me, because sitting on my bench in my Dynasty League, of course he is. Still won that league, though, by the way. Won that game. I don't know. He is what I would say. We can move on. I'll just say this about Rashod Bateman. He is Gabe Davis. I think is a decent comp. I mean, there's a little bit more of a floor there for me with Bateman than there is with Gabe Davis. But yes, it is a little. I think you've seen Rashod Bateman's best game of the season, and so I think as we're going to talk about him, and I want to talk about Cedric Tillman here as well. And I think it just sort of depends what you need. If you need somebody this week, Rashod Bateman on the road at Cleveland would be my choice, because I feel like at least we know he's going to be out there and playing with the best quarterback in fantasy football and potentially the NFL. But Cedric Tillman is somebody who, wide range of outcomes here for Cedric Tillman. Connor, you and I, he's another guy that's on my dynasty team that I'm really excited about. We've talked about Cedric Tillman since he was drafted.
Yeah, he was the Tyrone Tracy of 2 years ago.
Yes, he
and
was.
It didn't work out the way Tracy has, but also to be fair, it's his second year in the league now, and he's getting opportunity. With Tillman, such an interesting story. He was a star for Tennessee. Then his final year, he gets hurt, and Jalen Hyatt kind of blossoms over him in that offense. Tillman was still good, but banged up. And then he has the tough rookie year in this Browns offense that was crowded. It gets more crowded this year before they trade Amari Cooper. He finally plays 12 targets, Matthew, 8 catches, 81 yards, because he can play on the outside. That's the difference with him. So the snaps should be there for him, where a lot of these guys we talk about week after week, and we'll continue to do this with guys like on the Bucs, is the slot open for them because they really can't handle the outside? Tillman's 6'3", 215 pounds. He could be a possession threat on the outside. More importantly, as we saw in the 2-point conversion, a possession threat in the red area.
Yeah, I mean, I remember you telling me he was like your third
fifth.
Your
which
fifth.
is very high industry-wide. Like some people had him like 9th, 10th, 11th. I had him 5th that year, 5th or 4th.
You really liked him coming out of the draft, and you thought the Browns got a steal. I actually spoke to Kevin Stefanski, Coach of the Year, by the way. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but last year, Coach of the Year, Kevin Stefanski. No, some people think he lost, but no. Turns out he actually won the award last year, Kevin Stefanski. And I actually asked him about Cedric Tillman, and he told me, we like Ced. It's just we've got a crowded room there, but we like Ced, and he made some real nice progress his rookie year. This is me talking to him at the Combine. Obviously, with Amari Cooper now in Buffalo, Cedric Tillman, 82% route participation in his first game without him, got a 25% target share. And I think the interesting thing is I definitely would feel better about him if we knew Jameis Winston was starting for the Browns. As we sit here and tape this on a Tuesday morning, we don't know whether it's going to be DTR or Jameis Winston. Feels like it should be Winston, but then again, it feels like it should have been Winston all along, and they kept sticking with Watson. Yeah. And maybe with the season lost, in essence, for the Browns, that maybe they say, let's just get DTR some reps and see what we can develop there. Either way, Cedric Tillman's a part of their future in a way that that Amari Cooper isn't. And I have yet to be super impressed with Elijah Moore or Jerry Jeudy.
No upside.
No upside.
Tillman has touchdown equity upside. That's the difference.
So, again, he could do nothing, especially if DTR is the quarterback, but he could also be Amari Cooper in a better offense because they don't have to play Deshaun Watson anymore.
Yeah, not that we could trust the Browns to do the right thing, but if they want to do right by that locker room, you play Jameis Winston. If you're all about development, but it's going to hurt everyone else, they're going to play DTR. Our next one here, Jay, Bills rookie wide receiver Keon Coleman against Seattle, 67% available. It's funny, they get Amari Cooper, and it feels like Keon Coleman, who hadn't done a lot this year, been very sporadic, he has his best game, 7 targets, 4 catches, 125 yards. I don't believe this is sustainable, but he's at least noteworthy on waivers where things are getting a little thin.
No, I think there is this notion floating around that there is this causation between Amari Cooper being there, and that opens up more opportunity for Keon Coleman. All of Keon Coleman's production came when Amari Cooper was off the field. Amari Cooper only played 19 snaps, so that's just not correct. I think it's just that the big bombs happened to happen in that game where Amari Cooper was a Buffalo Bill, even though he wasn't part of those plays. So again, very boom or bust with Coleman. There are going to be weeks, I think, because of the talent, because of how much he's on the field where he will produce, but again, like in terms of Bills pass catches, Matthew, like it's Amari Cooper, you'd have Dalton Kincaid and Khalil Shakir probably still over Keon Coleman.
1,000% right. Now, he's had back-to-back weeks with over 80% route participation, which you like, and honestly, his day could have been even better. He almost had a touchdown that, like, that like he juggled, like he got one foot in and juggled it a little bit, looked like it was a touchdown and then was overruled. So his day could have been even better. But I'm with you, Jay, which is I think he's 4th among the pass catchers on Buffalo. We're mentioning him just because he had the big game, because he had the 4 for 125 in this one, 7 targets as well, and he's a big play threat. He was somebody that that will forever be linked with Xavier Worthy because of the trade between the Bills and the Chiefs. But so we're mentioning him because we're mentioning him. But I prefer Bateman and Tillman over Keon Coleman this week as you hit to waivers. Again, sort of depending on what you need. If you need someone for this week, it's Bateman. If you need somebody for sort of long-term upside, I think it's Tillman, who wide range of outcomes potentially for Cedric Tillman this year.
Another one here, staying in the AFC East at wide receivers, Patriots DeMario Pop Douglas. He's got the Jets. He's only available in 58% of leagues. He had 3 targets, and then he really didn't play in the second half, Matthew, due to the illness. Now, the one thing with Pop Douglas is, even when the Patriots, got blown out on Thursday night, the last time they played the Jets, he was the only one making some plays, and now he has Drake Maye, which is much better for him.
Almost a 38% target share. He's had 3 games with at least a 20% or more target share this year, and he's averaging 16 fantasy points per game. We like his talent, and I would say that to the extent you want to invest in the Patriots' passing attack, I prefer DeMario Douglas than the other guys at the moment. We have yet to see Jalen Polk or any of these other guys kind of emerge. Hunter Henry, obviously a big part as well. We'll talk about him when we get to tight ends. But Drake Maye has shown some signs of life. Like there's some signs of life in the Patriots passing attack. They play the Jets on Sunday. Man, it would be great if the Patriots won that game. Come on, be honest with you.
Great?
Be great.
Do you have to talk about the game after for 90 minutes?
No, I do not.
Exactly. That's what I thought.
It would be great.
Peak comedy. If they
it would be
lose.
peak comedy.
I can only take so
because
much.
after they effed me on Sunday night, the Jets are dead to me.
Well,
you
took Jets money line. Yeah. That's your own doing.
Because I believed in them. Because
I believed in them. That's also your own doing.
I have nothing against the Jets. I'd like Connor to be happy, but it just would be from a kind of cinematic perspective.
Yes.
It would be incredible if Aaron Rodgers goes to 2-6.
All right, so
you'll have more to talk about if they lose than if they win.
We'll see. We need the season to stay alive to Halloween. Deep league wide receiver waiver targets here. Jalen McMillan, of course, we're going to get into the Bucs game and talk about the fallout of some injuries there. But McMillan's available in 99% of leagues, as is Trey Palmer. They have the Falcons on deck. Jalen Tolbert, Tutu Atwell, Troy Franklin, Trey Tucker, Cedric Wilson, Khalif Raymond. These guys are available, besides Tolbert, in just about every single league right now.
Yeah, I mean, these are all sort of deep league ads. Sort of depends on what you need, who's available in your league, and depending if you need somebody for like longer term upside, like somebody like a Trey Tucker, if you need just somebody like immediately, maybe like a Cedric Wilson or Khalif Raymond, as Jameson Williams might miss a couple of games here as well. But I want to focus here real quickly on the Buccaneers wide receivers here. So you see Jalen McMillan and Trey Palmer there. I think Sterling Shepard will be involved as well. Mike Evans leaves this game early, aggravating the hamstring injury that he'd come into the game with. And of course then the brutal injury to Chris Godwin on one of the last plays of the game last night. Down 10, junk time. We can debate. Other people can debate whether or not Godwin should have been in there or not. We don't need to do that as well. But just real quickly, Chris Godwin drinks free.
Get healthy, Chris Godwin.
We want Chris Godwin. Get healthy. Get better soon. It does look like dislocated ankle, and his season is unfortunately done.
Indeed. And just quick, like anyone who's criticizing Todd Bowles for that, you also have to level even more criticism of like D'Amico Ryans having Nico Collins in the Minnesota game when they were losing by 27. But because there was no injury there, no one cares. So there just needs to be consistency on that. But yeah, I mean, Godwin was having the best season of his career. He's second in the NFL in receiving yards. He's having an amazing year. And also Mike Evans as well. Hopefully that is not a long-term absence. Certainly didn't look good. But yeah, not good for the Bucs or the Niners right now in terms of injury situations.
So, Connor, let's break this down. So McMillan is the rookie, won the third wide receiver job out of camp. He's had 15 targets this year. 7 of them have been on deep passes. They're using him as a deep threat. Now, do you think he can run more routes? Because Godwin is playing the majority of the slot there, which Sterling Shepard has done some as well. We've seen. So you tell me how you break this all down.
If McMillan is going to play in the slot, I'd be in on McMillan as an ad because I think there's a lot of targets on the platter for them. I didn't think coming out of college he had the play strength to consistently play on the outside. And there's been times where the Bucs have dabbled with that this year because they like who they like on the inside. So we said this, Matthew, back in August when McMillan was having a really nice summer. If an injury opens up the slot for him, he's, relevant this year, which is crazy to say about considering where he was drafted. But if they're going to continue to put other guys there and ask McMillan to play on the outside, I think you're going to see a lot of inconsistency.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. It's interesting. I keep hearing, Todd Bowles and Liam Cohen, they've been talking up Sterling Shepard, and he's had some moments.
Todd likes his veterans.
Todd does like his veterans, for sure. But he may not have a choice because McMillan just may, earn his way onto the field because they just don't have anyone else, especially, by the way, if Evans can't go. We don't know the severity of that injury just yet. Obviously, didn't look good last night. But McMillan would be my favorite if you're picking up a Buccaneers wide receiver. But, are you taking a stab on all of them, Jay, and seeing what happens?
I think so. There's just so much uncertainty. None of these guys have really established themselves. It's a new offense as well, so any lessons from last year, Jalen McMillan's obviously his first season. But, look, Baker Mayfield's been playing at a really high level this season, notwithstanding how he played last night. It's a solid offensive line. It's a creative, pass-happy offensive coordinator. So I think there is a lot of fantasy equity on this Bucs passing game. And so I do think if you're going to be taking flyers, at some point it is better to take flyers on these guys as opposed to Elijah Moore, who is in a really kind of barren fantasy wasteland in terms of potential production.
I think at least initially with the Buccaneers, what you'll see is an increased role for Cade Otton, who had the big game last night as well. And all 3 running backs, because all 3 of them, Rashad White, Bucky Irving, and Sean Tucker, can catch out of the backfield. So could you see 2 tight end set? Could you see a bunch of 2 tight end sets? Could you see multiple running backs in the backfield and just trying to do a lot more short stuffing? Yeah. And then, McMillan and Evan running some deep routes to try to open up stuff underneath. So I think a lot to be determined with the Tampa Bay offense and how they overcome these injuries. But we do think McMillan has the most upside of the guys that are available. But they're all out there.
We move on to running backs for Waiver Wired, and we start with Raiders running back Alexander Mattison. He's only available in 46% of leagues. He's got the Chiefs on deck. Coming off a week where he ran for 23 times, 92 yards. He was targeted 3 times for 31 receiving yards.
And the most important thing is Zamir White was active in this game. He sort of got the role because it was kind of a split there, and then Zamir White was out, but he played in this game, but he only played 10 snaps. He's now had back-to-back games with at least 15 fantasy points. It is shocking to me, but Alexander Mattison, on a points-per-game basis this year, is running back 26. You don't love him against the Chiefs, right? The Chiefs allow the fewest fantasy points to opposing running backs, but after the Chiefs, it's the Bengals, it's a bye, and it's at Miami. They're looking for answers in Las Vegas. So I do think if you're not looking for somebody this week, but you just need some depth, he is somebody that see if he's worth. He doesn't meet our threshold because he's 46% available, but he's out there in almost half leagues, and he's a starting running back in the NFL. That has value.
I'll tell you who does, Jay. Sorry to cut you off. Do you want to go?
Yeah, I can segue. You want me to segue? I'll try to segue. Speaking of guys who actually do have a bit more upside, Jaylen Warren actually played more snaps than Najee Harris against the Jets. He's doubling him up in terms of snaps where they were throwing the ball. So Connor, it seems like he is going to be the guy who could potentially take over the backfield at some point, but certainly is going to get the passing down usage.
And it's great with Russ playing. That's the difference. Justin Fields, he was checking down more than we saw in his career this year, but not at the rate that Russ will. And Russ Russ looked Warren's way a lot in this game, and I know the reception equity wasn't as high as you'd like it to be, but it's going to grow over the weeks. He'll eventually get in the end zone. Warren is a big factor in this backfield, Matthew.
He's had at least an 11% target share in 3 of the past 4 games. I like the fact that he played 50% of the snaps in Week 7. It's a nice matchup this week against the Giants as New York gives up 5.3 yards per carry to running back. That's the second highest in the NFL. You know Arthur Smith wants to run. You mentioned the Russell Wilson factor. I completely agree with you. We talked about this on Fantasy Football pregame Sunday morning, and I feel like we mentioned this on the show last week, the Tuesday show last week as well, which is just like Jalen Warren is too talented to be available in this many leagues. It's because he got banged up in the preseason. There was a hammy and and Justin Fields was running a lot, so you just didn't feel it. But I'm like, he's too talented. Arthur Smith is still going to want to run, and because Russell Wilson does not run, but is a more refined passer than Justin Fields, that's going to open up things for both running backs, Najee Harris, your guy Jay Croucher, and Jalen Warren, who I think Connor and I like more because he's talented. We like the talented guy. You just like Najee.
That's right. I like the guy who
scores touchdowns.
He's a big boy, Najee. Got to see him up close in person a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, very, very large human. Makes you wonder why he's not a little bit better in football.
Fair enough.
Some deep league running back waiver targets for Week 8. Tyler Goodson is available in 86% of leagues. He's at Houston. Dearness Johnson against the Packers, 93% available. The rookie Ray Davis against the Seahawks, 74% available. Kendre Miller against the Chargers. And Sean Tucker, as you hinted at, Matthew, that three-headed, I'm not going to say monster, but three-headed group of running backs for Tampa Bay.
Yeah, we'll talk about this game in just a little bit here, but Goodson seems like we don't know if Jonathan Taylor's going to be back this week. Might be one more week for JT.
Said he's very optimistic he'll play.
Yeah, so we'll see. So it's just a little bit more of a hedge in case Taylor, as the week goes on, just isn't feeling right. But he's now had back-to-back games with double-digit fantasy points. Feels like Goodson over Trey Sermon is where you're looking for in Indianapolis behind JT. Kendre Miller, by the way, 30% snap rate in his first game back, 8 touches. Alvin Kamara, they've had so many injuries, and Kamara is somebody that feels like he's starting to get worn down a little bit.
Definitely.
Doesn't look as explosive as well. And you wonder, with the Saints season going the way it's going, is Kamara somebody that could potentially be on the trade block for a contender?
Yeah, he's the type of guy where it's so tough to trade him after he had that game against Denver where he just put up nothing in the stat line. But if he does have a big game this week, then I would try and just move on from Alvin Kamara at the highest point possible.
Yeah, but I'm saying the Saints.
I know.
You're talking NFL, not fantasy-wise. Yeah.
I'm saying fantasy-wise for both, really. I think that, everyone's
sell
going to want to sell
Alvin
Kamara in all walks of life.
Yeah, but I'm just saying if you're the anyway,
the
Chiefs, somebody like Kamara is somebody that could make sense,
the more
NFL.
limited.
I don't think NFL general managers look at it the way fantasy managers do. No. So you could see Kamara potentially on the move, and so Kendre Miller becomes interesting, if something happens to him injury-wise or if he does end up getting traded.
We move on to quarterbacks, and help is on the way for Miami as Tua was designated for return yesterday, coming off a concussion, obviously, that's been well documented, spoke about a lot. We heard Tua speak with the media on his return from the serious injury.
So they cleared you from the concussion. About how long have you been, symptom-free for? Or how long have you been cleared from that concussion for?
I would say for myself, I've been symptom-free from the next day after the game on.
There are a lot of people out there legitimately worried about your health and making sure that you're okay.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to those that are worried that you might get hurt again and this is something that's going to continue?
I appreciate your concern. I really do. I love this game, and I love it to the death of me. That's it.
Tua very, very honest.
Very honest, and that's the weird part is that he won't wear a Guardian cap. Yeah. Anyway, whatever. It's his life, his choice, whatever. We're here to evaluate the fantasy prospect of him coming back, and the fantasy prospect of him coming back is, thank God, thank goodness for every one of us that has shares in Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and Von Achan. Thank God. Welcome back, Tua, with open arms. Thank goodness. I think you can make. He's not on any list. We're doing futures later in the thing. He's not on any list, and he won't win. But I think you could make an argument that Tua Tagovailoa should win Most Valuable Player this year. When you see what the Dolphins look like without him, tell me there's a team that doesn't drop further.
It's unbelievable. He shifts the line like 5-6 points, and he's not that level of player, I don't think. But in this specific offense, it seems like he really is. So he was QB9. He was QB9 in fantasy last year. He led the NFL in passing yards. He has a very favorable matchup against Arizona. So yeah, he should be rostered everywhere.
Yeah. Drake Maye also on our list. He's 84% available. He's got the Jets. He's coming off a week where he threw for 2 touchdowns. He also ran 3 times for 18 yards. I mean, Matthew, it hasn't been great, but it's been much better for the Patriots offense with their number 3 overall pick under center rather than Jacoby Brissett, and he's fantasy viable right now.
He's the 11th best quarterback in fantasy over the last 2 weeks. Since he became the starter, he's averaging over 20 fantasy points per game. He gets you some points with his legs. He's not as scared to throw deep. The Jets defense just revived Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson end of the week is like a top 5 fantasy quarterback thanks to your Jets.
What I would be careful with, though, they think that Michael Carter and DJ Reed could be back in this game.
Which would help.
2/3 of your secondary makes a big difference. I'm not saying Drake May's unplayable. I'm just saying there's a big difference.
They're totally.
The Jets' defense does not look good at all.
Totally, and it's been the run defense that's really been the Achilles heel, if you will, of the Jets' defense. And certainly, it's not the Jets' defense fault that Garrett Wilson was like, "Oh, here, you take it the other way."
Hot potato. Brutal.
Just brutal, and the media, of course. I read
Stop
that this morning.
Stop listening to him.
It's the media's fault, I think. Right?
Yeah. Number one.
First, it was
stop
Saleh's
listening to
fault,
you guys.
and I assume Joe Douglas is next. I'm just trying to figure out the list.
Running out of people to
point the finger at. It might be you, Connor.
I might be thrown off post game.
Yeah, exactly. Honestly, would be great because we'd get more of you here. I'm okay with it. Aaron Rodgers, if you're listening to this, I'm okay with you blaming Connor Rodgers for the faults of the Jets here. But anyway, Drake Maye, I do think. By the way, and then it's not a great schedule for him. Home to the Jets, at Tennessee, at Chicago are the next 3. Then he gets the Rams at home. But still, again, 56 rushing yards in his 2 starts. 40% of his rushes have gained at least 10 yards. So even in negative game script, I think there's a floor there because of the rushing. And I do think Drake Maye is borderline. He'll probably be in the mid-teens this week against the Jets, but he's definitely 2 QB league playable. He's probably rostered already in any 2 QB leagues. But I think in the right matchup, he's a borderline QB1.
How about new grape slapper Russell Wilson, Jay?
Trying to sell high on Russell
92%
Wilson.
available.
Anyone want to trade for him? Look, the reality is, I get that.
I'll give you Mason Rudolph for him.
No, I don't want that. He had the great stat line. He was solid overall, but the reality is he went 16 for 29 against a banged up, just not very good defense at the moment, and required some absolute miracle plays to produce. So, look, the Giants' defense isn't amazing, but it's not abominable by any stretch. Dexter Lawrence having an insane season. So, Russell Wilson, I think you can probably start. You can find better options to start than Russ this week.
Also want to mention Bo Nix. Since week 3, he's the 14th best quarterback in fantasy. Bo Nix, he's had at least 19 fantasy points in 3 of 5 games. He's had back-to-back games with 60. It's all like, we talk about PPR scam artists. It's all like rushing scam artists. Bo Nix is like
2023 Rashod White of quarterbacks.
He really is. He's like Tim Tebow back in the day was a fan. And not that he's Tebow, but he's not a good passer.
Is he Taysom Hill?
A little Taysom Hill-y. It's all kind of.
But he can't play tight end.
But the points count the same, and he gets Carolina this week. If ever there was a streamer, the Carolina Panthers. Also, by the way, if Jameis gets the gig in Cleveland, we've talked about him, Jameis becomes interesting. With Njoku and Tillman, and I don't care. Somebody's down there open. It'll be fun.
All right, let's move over to tight ends
for
Waiver Wired. Jay, Cade Otton with a big game. 10 targets, 8 receptions, 100 yards. He's 61% available. He's got the Falcons coming up, and with the injuries, these looks can continue.
Look, tight end, it's such a barren wasteland at the moment. It is really just about opportunity to go with a little bit of talent, and Cade Otton has that. So, he's a top 5 tight end for the time being, I think, being potentially the number 1 option in that offense.
To your point, he's had 4 different games with 6 or more targets this season. In those games, and so obviously with Godwin definitely out and Evans hurt, you'd think he's going to get 6 targets. Well, in the games this year when he's got 6 targets, there's 4 games. He's averaging over 12 fantasy points per game. Since week 3, he's the 8th best tight end in fantasy.
Hunter Henry also on the list. He's got the Jets. Hunter Henry, 9 targets. He's looked really good with Drake Maye. He's a focal point of the pass game.
He has 25% target share in week 7. The 2 games that Drake Maye has started, 15.2 fantasy points per game. There's clearly a connection there. The Jets have struggled against tight ends this year.
Will Dissly also on the list here, Jay. He's got the Saints. He's 99% available coming off the big Week 7, 11 targets, 8 catches, 81 yards for a Chargers team that threw a little more.
Yep, past 2 weeks they've had a positive pass rate over expectation, which is a good sign that they do want to throw the ball a little bit more. Look, any tight end that gets 11 targets from Justin Herbert should probably be rostered, and they get this Saints defense, which is really strong.
I've always loved Will Dissly. I have him in a dynasty league. He's a really good blocker, which gets you on the field with Jim Harbaugh. Hayden Hurst didn't play in this game, which helps, but still, they're looking for, and no QJ either, but still, you're looking for answers at tight end. The Chargers, Dissly has earned himself some more playing time. How about Noah Fant, who's now had back-to-back games very quietly with double-digit fantasy points, top 10 among tight ends in routes per game. We talk about how much Geno and the Seahawks like to throw. And Jatavian Sanders of the Carolina Panthers, as Carolina's looking to the future and trying to get some, get some eyes on some of their younger players. Sanders, who's a rookie, had a season-high 35% target share last week and now has 3 straight games with at least a 70% route participation. They play the Broncos this week, who have struggled a little bit against tight ends to the extent they've struggled at all.
If you need a defense, the Lions got the Titans. The Chargers have the Saints. Obviously, a lot of backup quarterback situations going on there. The Texans have the Colts as Anthony Richardson's struggles continue, and the Packers have Jacksonville.
In the case of the Texans, we don't want the backup quarterback. The Texans defense, you want the
Joe
starter.
Flacco. Nobody does.
No, you want Anthony Richardson there.
All right, we're going to break. When we're back, we're going to talk about Lamar Jackson potentially as the MVP frontrunner. Monday night takeaways coming up right after this.
Is Josh Allen the MVP right now? And if not him, then who?
I think it's Lamar Jackson. I mean, Josh is playing at a great level, but it's such a they run the ball so effectively. I feel like it's Lamar to me. Just the way he's playing and the way the Ravens are coming on. To me, the Ravens are the best team in the NFL right now.
Good call, Matthew, as Lamar Jackson's MVP path continues. It's odd to say, but it's a bold take at the moment.
That was Sunday night.
Yeah, but that was before Monday Night Football, by the way.
That was before Monday Night Football, and some of the other people, Josh Allen was the question, I think, was, again, is Josh Allen the MVP favorite? And I was just like, I think it should be Lamar Jackson, and last night he proved why. I mean, he was absolutely brilliant. 17 to 22, 281 passing yards, the 5 passing touchdowns. He also runs 9 times for 52 yards and a score. He's now had at least 40 rushing yards in all 7 games. He's the number 1 quarterback in fantasy this week. He's got the shortest odds to be MVP. Look at my guy, Jaden Daniels, on the list there. There you go. By the way, Jaden Daniels should be higher than C.J. Stroud, I think. And I mean, Mahomes is just a name at this point. He's great, but
the idea with Mahomes being that short is not that he would win a vote held today. He clearly would not. He has 6 passing touchdowns, 8 interceptions. It's that the Chiefs are 6-0, and presumably Mahomes will get better statistically as the season goes on.
And they finish the year 15-2 or 14-3.
And Mahomes has cleaned up his stats, then he will be in the discussion. But Lamar Jackson is the MVP right now. If a vote were held today, he would win, and he is most likely to win.
And rightfully so.
Yeah, absolutely. He has been clearly the guy. It's a very clean case overall. He's having a substantially better year than he did last year when he won with 49 out of 50 votes. So Lamar is clearly the guy, and everyone else, for now, is fighting for second.
Right. Okay. Much like I didn't want to talk about Rashod Bateman last night, I don't want to talk about Mark Andrews, who scored 2 touchdowns against me in producer Steven's, ridiculous almost victory.
Now, what we can say to this, Jay, is while
you go ahead. You talk.
Fantasy production's good, 4 catches, 41 yards, 2 touchdowns, still only a 61% route participation.
That's the thing, and he only played 32 of the 59 snaps, so
high.
that doesn't help either. And look, whenever you're producing value, because 50% of your catches result in touchdowns, that is going to regress a little bit. But look, he's showing signs of life, and it seemed like he was a guy who should just be cut everywhere. Now I think he is a viable streaming tight end, but he's certainly not an elite option.
I want to come back for the Bucs 3-headed backfield?
Sure. Why not? So Rachaad White, Bucky Irving, Sean Tucker, that was the order. You see it here. Todd Bowles loves his veterans. You mentioned that. Personally, I would play Bucky and Sean Tucker, but that's me. Best fantasy game of Rachaad White's career. He's the first Bucs running back with 2 receiving touchdowns since Michael Pittman Sr. in 2004. And maybe that becomes more a part of this offense with Chris Godwin out, and we don't know the status of Mike Evans. Just wait. He led the backfield with a 47% snap rate, and I think that's right. Is that ultimately I think it's going to be White and Bucky Irving, and Sean Tucker is going to play just enough to lower the fantasy ceiling of both these guys. Irving and White both have great games, good fantasy nights because they both get in the end zone. I don't know that you can count on that every week, but I think White and then Irving in that order are flex plays. Basically moving forward, and Tucker is just unfortunately insurance at this point.
Yep, Chargers, Cardinals, Connor, Marvin Harrison Jr., another tough day. Seems so boom or bust at the moment. Positively, Justin Herbert, they're throwing the ball a ton more in Los Angeles. 349 passing yards is very encouraging. But what do you think of Marvin Harrison? Is this going to get better?
It should, but I just don't see Kyler Murray playing in rhythm, and I don't see Marv having the chemistry with him. And oddly enough, 6 targets for a guy that what the Steelers did with George Pickens the other night, Marvin Harrison should get 3 of those.
Yeah.
Lob it up and see what happens in one-on-one coverage. Kyler doesn't really show a lot of interest in doing that.
Doesn't look good.
Part of the problem is their offensive line is awful, and so Kyler was under siege all of last night. Also, just bad body language from Marvin Harrison Jr. You know what I mean?
There's no connection between them.
It's weird. It just seems like whatever. He had a bad drop as well on the drive. Worth noting, though, by the way, for everyone that's like, I have all these comeback victories. Producer Damien, in a league that we're in, that last Marvin Harrison catch, he beat me by 2 points. So in a
justice
league
is served.
Exact. Justice is served as well. Tough day at the office for Dobby. I think that was just a matter of the Cardinals playing plucky defense as well. I'm not worried about it. He still got the majority of the work as well. And we already talked about Will Dissly, the greatest tight end this side of Mark Andrews.
We're taking our last break. When we're back to the futures as we do every Tuesday. Our favorite awards bets coming right up. DraftKings Sportsbook is the #1 place to bet touchdowns, and new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the app and use promo code Barry when you sign up. DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours! Back to the futures, as we always do on Tuesdays, looking into that crystal ball. Jay, what do you got for us?
Seahawks to win the division, plus 270 is plus 225 by my numbers. These San Francisco injuries are a big problem.
I like it. Matthew?
How about Dan Quinn to win Coach of the Year? Like he's plus 275 to win Coach of the Year, tied with Kevin O'Connell, who's an underdog to win his own division, but they're minus 210 to make the playoffs, and they're plus 120 to win 11 games. Like those odds, if he goes from 4 games to 11 games or 4 games to making the playoffs, like the odds. Anyway, at plus 275, give me Dan Quinn to win Coach of the Year. The odds still haven't matched up.
I'm going Jordan Love MVP plus 1,300. I think Jordan Love could throw 45 touchdowns this year, and the Packers could be a sneaky play for the #1 seed, as I said last week.
It's closing time. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. For Jay and Connor and Justice Prevailing, I'm Matthew. Peace out. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotorWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Roto-World fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.